Jill Scott is a professor at Queen's University in the Department of Languages, Literatures and Cultures. She joins me now from Kingston, Ontario. Professor Scott, first of all, thanks for taking time to speak with me. What is your reaction to the legislation the government has proposed today? Is this the blueprint for saving endangered Indigenous languages in this country?
So there's a lot to like in this legislation. I think it's very much high time that we had this kind of attention on Indigenous languages. So I think it takes us somewhat in the direction that we need to be going. I have some concerns about some aspects of the legislation, but generally overall, I think that it is something to be praised and something to be happy about in this moment.
Let's walk through some of those concerns. The bill creates a commissioner of Indigenous languages. Most of the Indigenous groups say that's what they wanted. What concerns do you have about that office?
Okay, so I'll say that I let's just start, if I can, with the first item in the list, which is around stable funding. So I think that when they've indicated that they're looking for stable funding for Indigenous languages, I think that's really key. And if I can just emphasize that programming up until now, both at the provincial level and at the federal level, has been program after program that has been short term, and it has been everything on very, very short timelines and for new projects, which really is not helpful for communities that are trying to do multi-year programming. So, with respect to the Indigenous Languages Commissioner, I think that's a great thing. What I would point out, though, is I think it would be really important to have an advisory council. You know, there's a saying among Indigenous people, nothing about us without us. And truthfully, even me speaking on this issue, I can only speak as a settler scholar. I can't speak for or about Indigenous peoples, but I think it's really very important that there be Indigenous voices at the table, really directing the kind of programming or the kind of the ways in which that funding is going to be used. Because in the past, really, it's just been one government agency after another creating programming that they think might be helpful for Indigenous communities, but is not necessarily informed by the experiences of people who have been working very hard to build and to get traction on language programming.
How critical is the threat to Indigenous languages in this country?
Yeah, I think it cannot be overstated. There are several languages where the language base is fairly stable, where you have a large number of first language speakers, where communities actually function in the languages. But then there are an enormous number of communities where there are a dearth of first language speakers, if there are any mother language speakers at all. And then you have second language speakers who are working extremely hard to bring their level up. But then often they're in a situation where how do you get enough second language speakers and enough people who have that kind of capacity to actually function in the language in the community? That's one of the issues. So then you have also the lack of resources. In some cases, there are no dictionaries for languages, no textbooks, no material resources to be able to help to teach those languages. And you also have language programming that's working on volunteers, where you have people who are not in full-time paid positions, where they may be doing 2 or 3 different kinds of jobs, and then working in other capacities for the community. And then now we're in a situation where non-Indigenous institutions like universities are looking to people to also teach Indigenous languages at these kinds of institutions, and then that takes away from community.
All right, listen, thank you so much for your perspective today as we continue to see how the government rolls this legislation out and what happens to it when it gets to committee. Maybe there'll be some proposed changes for it. But Professor Jill Scott, Queen's University, thanks for your time today.
Well, thank you.